As I was making this video that you're about to watch about the Hasselblad X1D 2, rumors popped up that Hasselblad is coming out with a new camera similar to the X1D 2 with some improvements, medium format, and hopefully with better autofocus. So while you're watching this video, please take those recommendations, Hasselblad, and make the new camera awesome, and I will be a customer. Here we go.
I got to try out the Hasselblad X1D 2 for a couple of months. I really liked the camera, but it had some significant flaws that made me think it's probably not quite the right camera for me. But man, I wish those flaws weren't there because this camera is awesome. Man, oh man. The colors coming out of this camera, wow. Not every time, but a lot of the time, this camera spits out very natural, human skin looking, that's what my eye actually saw level pictures, especially in terms of color science. I think what they're doing is they have about 4 or 5 profiles that the camera is smart enough to switch between so that you don't have to. And there's no standard, natural, vivid color profiles. There's just one Hasselblad natural color solution, and man, does that work. I wish more camera manufacturers would figure this out because, whew, this is great. However, the sensor in this camera is basically ancient. I believe it's the same small format, medium format sensor that was in the Pentax 645Z, which I believe debuted in May of 2010. That's right, more than a decade ago. And you can see in certain instances that this sensor is probably a decade old. It's not great in low light. It doesn't take image shake at all well. It's slow to read out. That might be a processor thing too, but I think it's also partially the sensor. So this camera is really not a speed demon, and in my experience, it's also not a camera that you take off the tripod and walk around with, really. I think that was probably Hasselblad's sort of intention with this camera system, but I don't think they quite achieved that. Let's talk about the sensor a little bit. This is not a full medium format sensor like in the Hasselblad H series and Phase 1 cameras. It's the smaller, sort of half-size APS-C version of medium format that's in the Fuji GFX system. I would have loved to see the full-size sensor in there because I have to imagine the images that come out of a camera like that would be incredible. Let's talk about lenses for this camera. Holy buckets. The lenses for this camera are nice. It's kind of a neat system. It has leaf shutters inside the lenses. There's no actual manual shutter inside the camera body itself. There's also no protector for the sensor, and you know how I feel about that. I don't like it. I don't understand why all camera manufacturers don't at least do what Nikon did with the Z9 and put that protector in front of the sensor. I think that's a really smart thing. Having said that, so the Hasselblad X1D sensor is in fact open to the world of dust and little particles and spit and whatever else might fly in your camera while you're changing lenses, even if you're being super careful. And personally, it's always a daunting experience trying to clean off that sensor. So, and then on the X1D, the sensor is quite big. It's a medium format sensor, so it's even bigger plate to grab dust particles. So anyways, the lenses themselves, with the leaf shutter mechanisms inside, are phenomenal. The reputation that Hasselblad has for superb glass is well deserved. These are incredible lenses, and when paired with this camera, as I said earlier, make for incredible images. I think the 90mm f1.7, I think it's 1.7, lens is probably the best digital camera lens I've ever used in terms of rendition, color, contrastiness, just the way it spits out images. Man, it's a beautiful lens. If they made a more functional camera body, that lens alone would be worth buying in my mind. That would probably get me to buy into the system, honestly. The other lenses in the system are also quite good. The only lens that I tried out that I didn't really like was the macro lens. I thought it was quite grainy, didn't do as good of a job as a full frame macro lens might do. I only rented it for a few days, but I just wasn't impressed. I don't believe that it had one-to-one macro rendition also. So you had to be further away from something that I would want to be in a lot of macro sort of commercial situations. So that was the one lens that didn't impress me. That was the one lens that failed to impress me. But every other lens on the system, even the little walk around, I think it was 50 millimeter, was really nice. And I'll throw up some images so you can see different lenses and how they render. It's really, really beautiful. I loved the design of this camera. I found the grip very comfortable. I could probably shoot with it all day. And for reasons we'll get into, I didn't shoot with it all day. But very comfortable camera, incredibly light, incredibly compact body size as well for a medium format camera. The lenses are big medium format camera lenses, and so that takes away from the small body. But the grip is so good that the big lenses didn't really bother me. I felt that you could sort of balance out the camera and the lens just by holding onto that big old beefy grip. I thought the buttons were fine on the camera. Nowhere near the tactile experience of a Leica camera, but still pretty premium feeling. Excellent screen on the back, decent viewfinder, acceptable battery life. So lots of good features on this camera. Let's talk about the menu system. At first glance, I really liked the menu system on the Hasselblad X1D too. It looks basically like an iPhone or an Android phone. Little apps that you tap and everything's driven by touchscreen navigation. And so at first I thought this was so cool. What a simple interface, what a simple and easy way to operate the camera. But as I used the camera, I realized that this isn't really that good of a solution for a camera. That's also probably why I don't really enjoy using my iPhone as a camera when I'm trying to do anything serious more than a quick snapshot of a friend or something, or a plate of food that I've eaten. The issue is that I personally I shoot mostly Leica cameras, as you might have figured out from this channel. And so I'm very used to being able to change my aperture on the lens, my shutter speed up top, my ISO up top on most cameras. And I can do it very quickly, in a very manual, tactile fashion. On the X1D, you can't quite do that as well. There's two dials and they work fine and they feel fine, but it's just not as quick and easy as spinning the aperture dial and having having the shutter dial that has the shutter speeds marked on it. It's just not the same. Certain settings are super hard to find, and then you're tapping and swiping and you feel crazy. You'd rather just assign it to a custom button and be done with it. And you can't really do that with the X1D. And I think the X1D's menu is sort of a wash. I think it's better than Canon, Nikon, or Sony's menu system, but it's nowhere near as easy to use as Leica's menu system, especially the new one that comes with the Q2s and the SL system. Just really easy to use with that interface. Of course, I have my issues with the Leica system too. Like when you change white balance, it doesn't show you the white balance on the screen. It's still a blacked out screen, but I'll get into that into another video. Finally, let's talk about the deal breaker features, the reasons I decided not to get this camera. First, no flippy screen. What is the deal with this camera manufacturers? Please, let me shoot from my waist, please. Let me shoot on the ground like this. There's a battery grip for this camera, so that would make it a little bit harder to shoot all day. But in reality, I'm not going to take this camera off the tripod and shoot with it like I might with a Leica camera or a Canon or Nikon or Sony camera, because there's no image stabilization. Any little shake of the camera totally ruins the image. So it's more of a tripod camera. and I believe that you can power it from USB-C, so I would probably just have it plugged in along with a tether cord and just use it as a studio camera. Another concern I have with the Hasselblad system is that I'm not totally confident that Hasselblad is going to come out with an X1D3. I wonder if this is something that was sort of an experiment. They made the box camera out of it, and that'll be it. Or they'll go to a modular system where they just have this, they have a box and then they change out the sensor every few years. Basically turn it back into a studio camera and totally junk the idea of a camera that you can take off the tripod and take it anywhere with you. Let's talk about autofocus. The X1D2 has the slowest autofocus I've used in a long, long time. If you enjoy a camera that goes bzz, 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 over and over again and often never reaches focus, then man, this is the camera for you. When it does nail focus, in general, it hits focus, but sometimes it misses. It's just not reliable. And kind of going back to my comments about the tactile nature of this camera, another problem is that the manual focusing experience in this camera is atrocious. It's the focus by wire, bad focus peaking, typical digital camera experience that so many, I think, Leica shooters try to avoid, right? There's no distance scale, so you can't just kind of figure it out by feel and knowledge of where the focus point is. The screen is good, so you're going to get as good as you can get with a camera like this with focus peaking, but even then, you still miss once in a while. Even if you zoom in very carefully, it's just not very good. In a firmware update, they added sort of a distance scale on the screen, but it doesn't have feet or meters, so you can't really be precise about it. And so just the manual focus experience on this camera just does not work. And that may be the biggest killer for me on this camera. I don't necessarily need autofocus. I manual focus a lot. And so if they had made a really, really nice manual focus system, I probably would have bought this camera. However, not a good manual focus system, and then the autofocus is insanely frustrating, even in controlled conditions like a studio. So for me, just man, that might have been the biggest deal breaker. In conclusion, I really, really like the X1D2, and I wanted to love it. It's so close to the kind of camera I'm looking for. In terms of form factor, it's easy to carry around. You can take it with you, throw it in a bag. The lenses are beautiful. The images coming out of it are chef's kiss when you can get them to come out of the camera properly. The color science is incredible. But man, the deal breakers are real deal breakers. The autofocus is terrible. The manual focus experience is even worse. No image stabilization. Essentially, it reads out too slowly. Just made it so this camera would be such a specialized tool that it wouldn't be worth it for the price for me. So please, Hasselblad, fix those items in the X1D3 or partner with Sony and have Sony fix them for you. I heard that Sony may be releasing a digital medium format camera. I have to wonder if it would be possible that Sony and Hasselblad teamed up to make a medium format camera. I feel like that would be the best of both worlds if Hasselblad sort of ran the process and then was able to take some of Sony's technology and put it into the X1D3 or whatever the new camera might be called. Sony has image stabilization. It's got killer autofocus. It's got super speed cameras, right? If you could combine that with everything else that's good about the X1D2, you'd basically have my perfect camera. Oh, also the flippy screen. Let's not forget the flippy screen. And there's a history of Sony and Hasselblad collaborating. Unfortunately, in those collaborations, it was really just a Sony camera wrapped in a Hasselblad-designed crazy town, space age body. So I'd like to see a little more technology sharing in the medium format dream camera that I'm talking about. But man, one can only hope, right? Be searching B&H's website for other medium format solutions. I will probably try out the Fuji GFX system, and I will probably continue to lust after Hasselblad's H system and try to tell myself that spending $25,000 on a camera body makes sense for me, which it really doesn't. So let me know your thoughts. Drop a comment in the comments below. Have you used the X1D2? Was your experience similar to mine? Do you have an X1D2 and I missed something? Should we start a campaign to Hasselblad to make an X1D3? Let me know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Very slow sensor readout. Just didn't work for me. My light just went off. I think it's telling you something. The camera just didn't work for me.